Welcome to our last edition of the show this week. Frontier Opening Bell. I'm Temple Ashaju. Ali Kansachi, the founder of Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi, Kenya, is here with us to give us some analysis, and Bosin, our executive editor here at Frontier Africa Reports, also here to give us some editorial considerations. Let's tee off with the market. Yesterday, we saw Nigeria jumping by more than 1.75% yesterday. BRVM Stock Exchange in BRVM Stock Exchange in Ivory Coast was negatively down some 0.04%. We have the Egyptian Stock Exchange in Cairo, 1.1% down, and of course, Kenya got some 0.6% positive on Thursday. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange was marginally down 0.51% on Thursday. We'll wait to see how this markets shape up again this week. Today, Friday, the last trading day of the week. Let's look at the Eastern African headline, where the Bank of Uganda's MPCs got the CBR at 7%, inflation at 5%, GDP growth is 4.0%. It's between 4% and 4.5%. This is like projections actually from the MPC meeting that just ended. Uganda is now eyeing China World Bank debt suspension on the rising default risk that we are seeing at this point in time. Courts OK's KRA to recover 234 million Kenyan shillings in payee tax claims from Equity Bank. Coffee price now slips by 6% on lower quality as main crop season ends. Dubai Islamic Bank Kenya joins Link network. Let's come to you with these headlines, Ali. But before you do that, it's an honor to also introduce Luke Ofojebe, who just joined us from Vetiva Capital Management, hoping that he'll be able to give us some very beautiful analysis on the show as well this morning. Thank you, Luke, for coming through. Ali, over to you now.
Thank you, Temple. Temple, let me first start with some earnings releases we've had over the last 48 hours at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We had Britam yesterday report a substantial loss of just shy of about 10 billion shillings. Britam is an interesting insurance company. It's diversified geographically. It's in a number of East African countries, and also a number of private equity investors took a stake during the course of last year in Britam. Management has been changed, and I think essentially we had a baby and bathwater results, where you just jam everything you can into those earnings. Particularly, they had taken a very big investment in real estate and built Britam Towers, only 51% occupied, and then they took some write-downs basically on the real estate. They took a write-down on their stake in housing finance, which is a tier 2 mortgage-focused bank. So, you know, although the headline numbers were a shocker, I think if you're looking through that, you're saying to yourself, look, they've done an answer. They've taken all the bad news in one hit, and hopefully we'll see better going forward. We saw two media companies report. Nation Media, which is the flagship media company here in East Africa, Daily Nation, amongst other NTV and other assets. And they reported a very meager profit. Revenues have been in decline since 2013, 2014. And the media businesses here in East Africa are really struggling. You know, we've seen globally this pivot to digital. You know, the likes in the West of the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, I've been looking at their numbers. I saw Wall Street Journal has 2.5 million digital subscriptions. The Telegraph in the UK is coming close to 1 million. But it's been much, much harder for the folks out here in East Africa. The sensitivity to pain has not been there. I think they should embrace micropayments. But, you know, with these legacy media businesses, when you hit with a Schumpeter moment, tend to react very poorly. And I think we've got that happening both at Nation and at Standard Group, which reported a loss as well earlier today. Getting back to your headlines, Bank of Uganda, CBR 7%, inflation at 5%, GDP 4 to 5.5%. The agri economy is really doing well in Uganda. Coffee exports have surged. Coffee prices, I'll get to that in a moment, And then you've got the oil coming online 2025. Total, basically putting 2025 in as the date. But against that, you've had this story coming out that Uganda's looking for a debt suspension, SSI participation, and speaking to China about restructuring their loans. Look, I think every African government is obviously suffering cash flow constraints, and therefore it is wise to be entering into discussions with your principal creditors, in many cases China. The challenge for African countries, I think, has been that, negotiating individually has given them very poor leverage, and they've actually had very poor leverage. You can see that from the contracts that have been signed over the last decade. You would have thought, people in a kindergarten could have negotiated better terms. But, I agree with Adesina that they should be negotiating together in order to gain better leverage with their principal creditors. And it'll be interesting to see how Uganda deals with that. Equity Bank, small, that's $2.34 million. It's insignificant to earnings, frankly. Coffee price slipped 6% on lower quality. But interestingly, coffee prices on global exchanges have been very, very firm. Not far off a multi-year high when I checked last. Dubai Islamic Bank, it's a small bank joining the PesaLink network. The PesaLink network has been connecting all the banks. But volumes have not been as high as I would have expected.
I appreciate all of those comments from you, Ali. Thanks a great deal. Bosin, I know you will be interested in the Uganda story. Here they are still asking for a $2.2 billion loan from China, trying to support the standard gauge rail project. Do you think they should get that deal or not?
Well, the whole East Africa needs they need that deal. Kenya has been building some that Ali always described, whether it's a railway to nowhere. But again, the East African corridor needs it. There's a major rail line going on in far down West Africa between Guinea, Sierra Leone, which is tied to mining activities, and it's cross-country, about 2 or 3 countries, all the way to the seaport. I think from Guinea down to Sierra Leone seaport and all that. So we need infrastructure that can blow up Africa, that can open up Africa. We need it massively for all the mineral resources, agriculture, and what have you, transportation. But again, we need to be careful if these projects are well priced and will be delivered on time at the value for money from an economic point of view. The final point I want to make very quickly is just the breaking news coming through that MTN Rwanda has launched its own mobile money, registered a new company, a subsidiary called Mobile Money Rwanda Ltd. Now, MTN is planning to list on the Rwanda Stock Exchange on the 4th of May, which will be around Wednesday next week or so. Now, to launch this means that they are beginning to knock at the doorsteps of Safaricom, which is next door in Kenya. So I'm sure Safaricom will be taking note of this and not taking it lightly. But let's see, the game is opening up in East Africa from Rwanda to Kenya, which is already the king, then all the way up to Ethiopia with its own licensing with MTN. Looks like MTN is coming in from Rwanda up there, down there, and Ethiopia down there to hand Kenya in. Ali's keeping a permanent eye on that, by the way.
I'm very sure he's not the only one keeping his eyes on that. A lot of investors are also keeping their eyes on that ball, actually. Even look in Nigeria over there. Let's move on to the Western African headlines. Where the Central Bank of Nigeria replaces the boards of FBN Holdings, FirstBank, a subsidiary of FBN Holdings. They retain the chief executive officers and group managing directors. The CBN, that's Central Bank of Nigeria, wants recapitalization of cash adequacy ratio, good governance. That will be a bit of a corporate governance there. Insider loans, all of that cleared. Seplat first quarter 2021 revenue was up by more than 16%. There's a name change to Seplat Energy PLC in the offing as well. You have Airtel Africa. President Buhari congratulates incoming Chief Executive Officer Shola Ogunsoya, who has just been announced. Air Liquide Cote d'Ivoire posted some 2.46 billion CFA franc loss in 2020, and the World Trade Organization and Liberia's trade facilitation agreement begins today. Let's hear your thoughts first, Luke, before we defer to the rest to Bosen for some perspectives.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So as regards the update on FirstBank, I mean, I was surprised at what the CBN decided to do, but I wasn't surprised at what led to the CBN to decide that, because that's something we've been hearing for some time. When you talk about FirstBank, you know, there's always been issues as regards, you know, malpractices from the board members, especially in terms of, you know, loan management, you know, granting loans to the businesses of the board members, not following due process and the likes. So I think that's what the CBN is trying to put an end to, and that should also serve as a note of caution to other banks in the sector, basically. Going forward, we think for the markets, we might see more of negative trading as a result of this, because I mean, for investors, it seems more like they see a bit of uncertainty as regards what to expect for FirstBank. Are we going to see more rigid risk management framework going forward in terms of issuing loans, and that can actually impact their interest income? Also, in terms of, you know, trading activities, are we going to see, you know, strict risk management as well, which can also impact their interest income from investment securities? So on this basis, it's likely that we might see more of negative trading on the stock in the markets today. But I don't think that will linger on for a long period of time, given the fact that for the domestic investors, like we normally say, they have short-term memory. So after like 2 or 3 trading sessions, I mean, you start seeing more of positive trading on the stock again. But the interesting thing to note is that, I mean, other banks, you know, might see this as a note of caution, and they might also want to start, you know, looking at different ways to efficiently and prudently manage their loan books going forward. Then maybe for the updates on Seplat, I mean, we saw the company report a 16% increase in their revenue, quite interesting. That was mainly driven by the strong recoveries we've seen in oil prices. I mean, we've seen stronger than expected improvement in oil prices. Currently, Brent price is around $65 per barrel. And going by our expectations, we expect Brent price to remain at that level through the year, and that should continue to support, you know, Seplat's performance in subsequent quarters. And last year, the company reported a loss that was mainly due to an impairment charge of about $145 million on the oil and gas assets. This year, we don't expect to see any of that. As a matter of fact, in their Q1 results, there was no impairment charge. So on this basis, we expect to see further improvements in their bottom line, which means that by the end of 2021, we should see the company returning back to profitability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luke. I like your concept of short-term memory investors. I like to play with them, actually. Bosen, you have the rest of the floor.
Yes, just on FirstBank very quickly, and this is the most important point for me. This bank has a history, like Luke talked about it, this issue of weak credit decisions at the board level. They've run into problem about twice or thrice now over the last 20 years, and major troubles, by the way. During the Nitel privatization of the early 90s, FirstBank ran into problem with the Nitel privatization over the ILL, which is a private company that wanted to, which was bidding to the BPE. That resulted in the exit of the managing director of FirstBank, then Bernard Lunge. Then a couple of years down the line, there were some of these issues even with Bola Onosanya concerning some of these insider loans and non-performing loans. So then we now have this situation on our hands now, resulting in massive regulatory action. So how First Bank of Nigeria can be restored to a level in which the board will no longer have such life and death sword or the Damocles on the bank remains what the interim board or management team that the central bank has put in place will try to ensure. I think one thing the central bank will want to ensure now is a whole rearrangement of the ownership of First Bank. But because it looks like some big elephants had been there for too long and they had to be moved out of the way. And perhaps that had happened by yesterday evening. So now we can have what you call a blue ocean, in a manner of speaking, for First Bank, that the decisions of few very powerful individuals on the board will no longer put the bank in trouble. It's happened first time, it happened second time, it's happened the third time. Now, this is a bank from where you've had two central bank governors. That means this bank is very important. This bank is systemically important and all that. And everybody in the industry look up to First Bank. When the managing director of First Bank enters a room where all bankers sit, everybody else stands up. It's like the central bank governor. That is how powerful and strong First Bank is, and shouldn't be seen to be getting messed up after every 5 years or a couple of years down the line. Then the issue begin to rear its ugly head again. I hope this is the last time we will see such a situation in First Bank. If that happens to second tier or third tier bank, well, you can say, okay, well, you know, but for the level of First Bank, I think this should be a closure on that. Airtel Africa, that is how succession should be. There's going to be a 9-month overlap. I'm happy President Buhari congratulates the first Nigerian to head to be the CEO of Airtel Africa. That is good news. And I want to see the Nigerian political actors and leaders congratulate those who are making strides in the private sector as well, such as this. So I complained about that before. I was upset. So I'm happy that this one has happened. That Mr. President says, yes, congratulations, because I just don't understand it. I complained here on the show and I said, look, why do you think these guys are like orphans? The US president will talk about the big companies in the United States. They will talk very well about them. They will promote them in every way. But here in Nigeria, you see all these things happen. Everybody just keep quiet. Everybody just keep moving on, keep having the same usual political whatever. And nobody talk to the private sector. Nobody embraces the private sector and see them shining. Oh, but except Burna Boy, who won the last one for Nigeria in entertainment or music? Oh, okay, yeah, with the video, whatever. Oh, yeah, everybody will sing around them. But when it comes to the boys on Wall Street, if Luke Ofojebe and his team at Vertiva gets a big deal with the Moroccans or whatever, the Egyptian, then you won't hear anybody. Minister of Finance won't say, well, the central bank will keep quiet, everybody will keep quiet. So I was happy yesterday when I saw that Mr. President, that's quite an unusual press statement around 7 p.m. that President Buhari congratulates the CEO of Airtel Africa in Nigeria. That was quite a short statement. I love that. Sorry for spending more time on that. Let's move on.
No, it's fine. Moving on now to the Southern African headlines, where in South Africa you have the PPI Producer Price Index at 5.2% for the month of March, highest annual rise since June 2019. Vivo Energy's Temitope Lawani now named the director of Pershing Square Holdings. You have Jubilee Metals Zambian operations delivering first copper material to Cebu and Refinery, and in the Botswana Stock Exchange, New African Properties post some 82.8 million Pula profits in the first half of January 2021. Let me bring these headlines to you, Ali, and if you will also like to share a bit of expectations around what we can keep our eyes on between WTO and Liberia that are expecting the trade facilitation agreement to commence today.
Yes, thank you. So let me just firstly start with South Africa PPI at 5.2% in March, highest annual rise since June 2019. And I think this is all about food prices amongst other inputs. And, you know, we better keep an eye on inflation overall across the globe. It's becoming a bit of an intractable challenge and a concern. And we need to keep an eye on the agri-index. Counterintuitively, agriculture is a strong part of South Africa's economy. South Africa has been outperforming its emerging market peers. People are looking at Russia and looking at the political risk, Turkey the same. And we've seen significant outperformance in not only the currency, but also in the stock market, which is up about 15% in dollar terms since the beginning of the year, one of the best performing stock indexes in the world. And then also you've got bond yields, 10-year bond yields around 9%, which is very attractive, and a lot of people are piling into that as well. So the capital markets and the currency and the equity market all painting a pretty rosy picture for South Africa right now. Viva Energy, which is all over the continent, it's a big deal here in Kenya as well, and has done very successfully in terms not only of just wholesale fuel distribution, but also in the forecourt. That's interesting that Pershing Square Holdings have headhunted Temitope Lawani. Jubilee Metals, Zambia Ops deliver the first copper material. Look, copper prices are at a 10-year high. This has been a get-out-of-jail card for President Lungu and Zambia. You will remember, not too long ago, there was serious concerns about the whole Zambian situation. It has been on an exponential improvement. Trade surplus is about $2.5 billion over there. But however, the problem for Zambia is going to be that in negotiations with its creditors, the creditors are going to look at that copper price and say, hang on a second, the situation last year does not pertain anymore. You're in a much better position and we expect a much better deal.
Thank you very much. Thanks a great deal, Ali. For those, I think we should just move on to the Northern African headlines and possibly come back if we have anything to add on the Southern African markets. Egypt is recounting its losses, says some $23.5 billion has been lost to the virus pandemic since it started, says the finance minister Mohamed Mait. Middle Egypt flour mills was saying this profit after tax. They recorded a profit after tax of some 73.04 million Egyptian pounds. Naquib Sawiri resigns as chairman of Orascom Investment Holdings. Egyptian starch company also buys back over 498,000 shares at 4.799 million Egyptian pounds. A Franco-Tunisian bank sends SOS to government to ensure continuity. You have Tuniso-French startup Expensia completing some $20 million capital raise. Bossa, let me hear your thoughts before we get the final words from Ali.
I'm surprised this very high level of this is quite a huge piece of body that Egypt lost to the virus pandemic. I'm sure that will be coming straight from, I don't have the breakdown, but I'm sure that will be from the hotel tourism sector. So I'm sure Ali can look a bit more into that. The Franco-Tunisian bank sending SOS to the government to ensure continuity. Look, things there is a very unsettled time in which we live right now. So I think the corporate news are coming through from 2020, first quarter this year. The whole ramifications of the last year are just beginning to show up in the numbers right now. Now the tide is out. We know who is been swimming naked through the pandemic last year and all of that. Thank you.
Thanks a great deal, Bosin. Ali, you got the floor.
Yes, so again, optically that 23.5 billion number looks extremely large, but I suspect at least 30 to 40% of it is just tourism alone. The pandemic, Egypt's got a thriving tourism sector. It's a destination for many people all around the world, and I think that was the biggest hit. And I suspect exports of some kind or another as well. That announcement of Naquib Sawiri is interesting. Naquib Sawiri is very close to the LCC administration. When the argument was going on with Ethiopia, he was the most vociferous flamethrower on Egypt's side. So it'll be interesting to dig deeper. Orascom has been one of the flagship companies in Egypt. There must be a backstory to that. Maybe we can get your gentleman from Dubai to speak about it when he next comes on. That would be an interesting story to dig more deeply into. Tunisia, of course, has been applying to the IMF for a new loan and has been applying to the US for loan guarantee support, and clearly is facing a very tricky moment. And it's interesting that you're getting an SOS out of the Franco-Tunisian bank evidencing what are very, very choppy waters.
Thank you so much, Ali. Luke, any contributions or last word for the show today?
So speaking on the markets, I mean, we've been seeing more of mixed trading in the Nigerian stock market. Next week, we may start seeing a bit of positive trading due to the fact that for some companies that have released their interim results, that's their Q1 results, we see more positive improvements, especially for companies in the retail sector. We've seen that in Dangote Sugar and a couple of other manufacturing companies. Whereas for the banking sector, it's been more of a mix. For GT, for instance, GT and Stanbic, we saw like a decline in their gross earnings as well as a decline in their net income. Whereas for Access Bank, it was the opposite. We saw an improvement in their top line as well as bottom line. So for the banking index, we may see more of mixed trading in that space. Whereas for companies in the retail sector, we might see more of positive trading going forward.
Appreciate all of those coming from
Temple, if you permit me for just a quick one on FirstBank issue with Luke, what the views are. Flour Mills, which is also listed, sorry, Honeywell Flour, which is listed, and which about Tudeko, who's now exited, been removed from FirstBank, is a major one of the companies with the insider dealing loans issue that the FirstBank took this regulatory action. Do you think in any way investors will begin to put a big question marks on Honeywell, even as that company is planning to do a bond issue on the market? Do you think there could be what you call the unintended consequences on Honeywell Flour?
Okay, so to start with, so I mean for Honeywell, is not really a company that we have investors who invest based on fundamentals actually look at to start with. So I think for investors who trade on that stock, is usually traders and retail investors that are just investing based on speculation that this stock will go up today, it will go down tomorrow, and things like that. Then in terms of the impact it can have on Honeywell's financials, is that I mean from what I've read from various media sources, is that the CBN wants to force the redemption of the loan granted to the company, and if that is going to happen, we're going to see like a negative impact on the company's cash flow management, because it means that they need to do everything possible to pay that debt immediately if that's the action that the CBN really wants to take. And so that might want to force the company to raise debt from another financial institution just to pay off that debt, and this can come at a higher risk premium from another financial institution basically. So it can lead to higher finance expenses for Honeywell. It can also significantly impact their cash flow management in the interim, which might not be a good one, because I mean if cash flows have continuously constrained for a couple of days, it can actually have a negative impact on their bottom line.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presence on the show today. Luke Ofejebe from Vetiver Capital Management, thanks a great deal. Ali Kansachu, thank you for joining us all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. Bosana Mofaye, thank you for your editorial considerations. And this has been the show for today. I'm Temple Ashaju. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.